Welcome to Right Talk with Mike Lee. Hope you enjoyed my new introduction that my producer made for me, or made for you or us, however you want to take it. But my guests, I have two guests today that I'm excited about having, and I'm glad that they were able to meet each other. This is Brian Gaines on my left, and this is Kennard Wright on my right. And we want to discuss some things of general and community interest, some of which was suggested to me by others. Because as I envision this show, this is not my show. This is a community show. It's to help, inform, educate, and enlighten the community. This show I'm looking forward to because I feel that will be enlightening, at least for me, and I hope so for you also. Now, these gentlemen, I met them. I don't know if they're friends. I know at least one of them is an acquaintance for sure. I just met Brian very recently in the last several months. I met Kennard about a year ago, so something like that.
Year or two.
Year or two? Mm-hmm. Guess it's been that long?
Yeah, it has been at least a couple of years.
Well, you getting old, man. I wanted to pose a few questions to you guys for your responses to help me understand some things, to bring me perhaps around to a more clearer way of thinking and looking at things, probably more in line with what my wife thinks already. She's smarter than me anyway. What do you believe to be the three main issues of concern regarding particularly the black community? I don't know if you know this, but in my view, I have a saying that I like to use every show. I like to say what's good for the black community is good for the community, because I believe that. And because I believe if the boat rises, everyone on the boat can benefit.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like that idea.
Absolutely.
What do you believe to be the three main issues of concern regarding particularly the black community?
If I could address that, yeah. And people probably battle and go back and forth about, their top three or whatever it is, but I truly believe that the main concern is fatherlessness. And from there, everything else is a byproduct of that. From fatherlessness, you get, from your father, that's where you're supposed to get your first taste of authority. That's where discipline comes from. That's where your identity comes from. That's where you see what a protector looks like. That's where you see what a provider looks like. It's supposed to be. But when he's not there, the kid, especially the boy, has nothing to model. So what does he look to? He looks to guys on the street, guys on TV, other negative folks that you may see in your family or whatever, and those are the people that they model. So I believe that the first primary problem in our community is fatherlessness. In addition to that, and like I said, there's a myriad of problems. I just think that's that's definitely the main one. Another problem in the community that a lot of people don't address is that the community has no leadership. Again, that comes from fatherlessness. But in our community, we are led unlike any other community. And what I mean by that is, if you look at the Jewish community, and generally Jews, they have religious tendencies. There's Orthodox Jews. And in the Orthodox Jewish community, they are not led by the rabbi. They are led by the business leaders. The business leaders run the community. They run the marketplace. They generate the incomes, they hire people, they raise funds, they do business, they fund projects, so they run the marketplace. In the black community, the priests or the preachers lead the community. And that's totally backwards. That's a backwards concept. If you look back in the Old Testament, God didn't want them to have a king, but they wanted a king, so they had a king. And so what God did is there was a king, and then there was a prophet that was in place that checked the king, that made sure he was kept in check. And then the priest was in the temple doing the ministry of the Lord, dealing with the word, dealing with the temple, taking care of the temple, and that sort of thing. And never was that model of the priest or the preacher leading the community ever a biblical concept. It wasn't there. And so, but today, what we see is we don't see kings in the land. We don't see prophets checking the king, but we see priests leading the communities. And so we see that out of that counterbalance, the effects of that in our community. And so I believe that's two. I think that's the second thing that's really hurting our community. The third thing that's really hurting our community is, and I'm going to give you an analogy to answer this question. Okay, imagine yourself driving down the street. Okay, so you got this big windshield before you. And so everything that's before you, you can see it clearly through this big windshield. Okay, and then on your mirror, there's a little 3-inch by 9-inch rear view mirror. Okay, you're going forward, but you see this rear view mirror. And so by looking in this rear view mirror, you're facing forward, but you're looking at a view that's behind you, okay? And so what we're doing is we are looking back too much. We're taking a view backwards too much. Instead of looking at all the possibilities that are before us, we're looking in that rear view mirror, facing forward, but looking in that rear view mirror, looking backwards. And as a community, we're doing too much looking back, and we're not looking forward to the possibilities that are before us through that big windshield that's before us. Those are the top three for me.
Okay. I was, give me your reaction then. Your response. Big three.
It's hard to say three.
Right.
But I would say the fatherhood or the lack of fathers or males in the community is very important. I think the first thing there is that people aren't in the home, or like we were saying before the show, when my parents were divorced and my dad wasn't there, I had someone to step in. Well, nowadays you don't have that, right? You don't have people that will step in and help their kids, or rather their nephews or the people on their block. So the lack of fatherhood, fathers being involved is there. Some of that is by policy, like from like the Monahan and the welfare state and the Great Society and all that. And some of it, frankly, is because we have failed to teach our children who they are, what they are, and that they're responsible for somebody other than themselves. And men are taught to how to have protected sex, or how to drive, or how to do this, or how to steal, or how to do good on the test, hopefully. But men are not taught how to lead. Men are not taught how to support a woman. Men are not taught how to love a woman. When men are not taught how to love children. And so the lack of fathers affects you economically, socially, mentally, spiritually. So that's completely on point. There's so many other things. I think one of the things he mentioned, or at least touched on, was just leadership. The leadership that we have, like I'm from Maryland and Baltimore, in Atlanta, in whatever city, is one of the other problems is ineffective leadership. Ineffective in the sense that they may speak or espouse like a party dogma or whatever, but if you look at what they produce over time, 30, 40 years, you don't have anything. And so you have to think, and like we said before, think beyond the context of what you're looking at. Don't look at Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton. You don't necessarily need to even always look back to King, but look to the people on your block. Look to the guy at work that I tried to coach on how he was dressing, and if he wanted a full-time job. You can't wear no T-shirt to work. And so the leadership, being progressive, but leadership not being monotheistic. Don't just think one party is your friend, for that matter. Don't assume that any party is your friend, but understand that you need to look forward in your solutions. You got to think beyond where you've come from. If you want something different, you must do something different. The other thing that's a little bit different is that I actually believe on some level we've gone away from understanding who we are in a spiritual sense. We'll have people that are Muslim or Christian or Baha'i or whatever, but primarily we've been a community that believed in the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And this will like get me in trouble in some places, but the truth of it is that if you have a faith in Christ, then you understand whose you are, what you can do, and that there is nothing you cannot do, whether it be police brutality, black on black crime, or whatever. I think you mentioned it earlier. You shouldn't look to just preachers. Now, you should look to a preacher for edification. You should look for them to let you know who you are. But a lot of the preachers we have now that I definitely agree with, they're, I think I said it yesterday about people in politics. People care about things that will benefit them. They don't really care about serving people. So on the one hand, I'm saying that we need to understand if you believe in God, you need to look to God first. You need to look to the Word first. You need to look to the Holy Spirit first. And if you don't believe in God, that's cool. You look to whatever your faith is. But if you're saying you're a Christian, you're not only looking to that pastor, you're looking to God, you're looking to the Word. So the point is, you need to develop yourself mentally. You need the problems in the community, the mental, spiritual, and fiscal, or the responsibility or growth of the people. Though, if you can have some level of growth in those areas, you can tackle any problem. You don't need Black Lives Matter, George Soros, Donald Trump. It used to be we would look to ourselves, and you might have a discussion with Frederick Douglass and Du Bois or Garvey and whomever, or Malcolm and King, but at the end of the day, they sat down at the table and somebody was doing something for somebody. You know, Malcolm said, and I said to y'all earlier, he said, hey, you go ahead and tell me who gives me what, tell them what you want, who gives you something, the thing or policy you want, and you move forward. The whole point there is do not be, again, monolithic. Well, you should be monotheistic. I don't know. But the point is, don't be stuck in a paradigm. Mm-hmm. So you need to understand who we are, because at the end of the day, we're responsible for us. It used to be we understood that we were the designers, we were the originators, we were the drivers of our community. And it didn't matter if it was Jim Crow, which was promulgated a lot by Democrats at the time, Ku Klux Klan was Democrat, or Republicans now, whomever the problem was, or whatever you think the problem is, we knew that I was going to work with that brother. I ain't had to like him. I could hate that fool. But I knew I had a responsibility. So it's like, all I'm saying is there's so many different things. We need to understand who we are, whose we are, and understand we're a community. And when you do that, you can do anything.
Now, both of you have pointed out something that occurred to me when I was trying to put the show together and when I was trying to decide who to invite and how you guys might interact. And a couple of words came to my mind when I thought about both of you. Both of you seem to be God-centered, civic-minded, and focused men, number one. Number two, it seemed to me that both of you have pointed out something that struck me when I thought about my big three. My first one was family, because right now I believe we have unequal family situations, and I believe those unequal family situations stem from what the two of you have pointed out, which is the absence of sort of male leadership. Not to be chauvinistic, but I don't care if I am.
That's not chauvinistic.
But there are things that work and things that don't work. And when I thought about the inequality in terms of families and social situations, that plays out in social, economic, and political realms. So I think that as a community, that we have to, I think both of you may tend to agree with this, that we need to focus on ourselves and what we need to do.
Absolutely.
Not what we want someone to do for us, what we need to do to make it happen.
That's right.
Yeah.
And
Now-
go ahead. Go
ahead.
I was going to say, well, I mean, you're talking about self-sufficiency, and that's what many times what we've done. That's what Black Wall Street was about, self-sufficiency. Tulsa, yeah. I mean, Durham. They were all over the place. Durham, Richmond. So it's not like it can't be done. It's something that's in us. Oftentimes, though, for the lack of a better term, and it's not just our people, but people in general, but we're talking about black folks, but we've been brainwashed to a degree. And brainwashed meaning, look, there's a genetic, there's things that we can't control, okay? And I'm just gonna break this down for you real quick. When we were born, we can't help what gender we are. We didn't have a choice in the matter. We didn't have a choice of what genetic makeup was, what our name was. We didn't have a choice. What food we ate, our parents gave us that. What language we were gonna speak, our parents gave us the language. The clothes we were gonna wear, they told us the clothes we were gonna wear. So and also from a social standpoint, there are conditionings and programmings that we have as a cultural people, mental paradigms that we have that we can't control. We're a lot of times we're on autopilot with the way some of us think. It's not we're not even consciously thinking of the things that we're doing sometimes. It's just that's what we do. We do that. Why are you late? I don't know. Just late. I'm always late. And there's just things that happen in our community that's just on autopilot. And so I think that, and I think you mentioned the word paradigm when you were talking. But that mental paradigm, whatever it is that's in our community that's affecting us, we have to recognize that, and we have to stop and really think about why we do some of the things that we do. Because when you do something, you can't blame somebody else for why you do something. It's you doing it. And so oftentimes we try to blame the other person, blame a neighbor, blame another culture, or whatever it is. We can't do that. The only person that you can blame is the person that you see in the mirror, generally speaking, for your condition.
Okay. I want to pose this question for you guys.
Okay.
We see what is happening in Chicago, Baltimore, St. Louis, and other cities across the country with a large minority population. But we live in Austin, which I sometimes refer as the belly of the beast, where the black population is less than 10%. Do you have any thoughts or feelings on what can be done or what approaches we might be able to take in Austin on a small scale that may be projected on a larger playing field, so to speak?
I think there are different things you could do and the different strategies, but I think sometimes it really comes down to a decision that each person has to make, that each church has to make. It's kind of like my colleague was saying, look, at the end of the day, there's bad things going on and a lot of things that are our responsibility, but it's how we react to them. Whether you look at it per psychology, socially, mentally, or spiritually, it's reaction. People have to decide that they want to do something. And so when you understand that you have the power, that I don't have to go ask you for something, that I have the power to affect my community, to affect my family, to affect my church, to affect my people, then you have to acknowledge it and you have to act, even if it's on a small level. I just think ultimately it has to come down to people making a decision. You don't need a Jesse Jackson. Jesse Jackson had to rise from somewhere. You don't need a Barack Obama, and I'm not saying any of them are bad people, but they had to rise from somewhere. The cream rises to the top, but in this case, you can't rise up if you're not conscious of it mentally and spiritually. It has to be a decision. If I'm helping anybody other than my daughter, any one person, it's a decision. And I think that's the key, because without each person being committed, or at least 30% of the population, if you want to throw out numbers, without 20 to 30% of the population, doesn't matter, it's not critical mass. You'll have a negative effect. It'll be minimal. It's a waste. It's almost a waste of time if people don't buy in.
That kind of touches on what for me was another one of my big three. I think my big three was family. My big concerns were family, education, and economic opportunity, or opportunity period. Because I think it's been said since forever that education was the key. But I don't get the sense that we have education as a priority for our children the way we should, and that it's being effectively carried out the way it should be to help them. Mm-hmm. Because the future is not us, the future is the kids. And speaking of which, were you guys aware of the Mastering Manhood conference this weekend?
Absolutely.
I hope that you guys will attend that, because I've talked to you about Isaac Grove. You know Isaac, right? Mm. But I've talked to you about trying to meet him, and Ken Thompson, who's on KZI Radio.
Kenny?
I'm pretty sure that we'll all be in attendance at some point. It's Saturday.
23rd.
Mm-hmm. You know, those are usually well-attended events. You know, the kinds of events that we as black men need to be involved with.
But if I could interject, my humble colleague, I'm being facetious.
I don't know how humble I am.
Well, I know that too. That's why I'm being facetious. And I'm not saying it per this event. I've lived in this place 20 years. And if I told you every time I went to an event, not this one, I would think, knowing Kenny, particularly knowing Kenny, you go and you have the event and everybody sings and the kumbaya, and you start singing and they start talking lines from Sankofa, which is a great movie, a Yoruba word that means like when you look back into yourself, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody sings. And then a week later, 2 weeks later, 4 months later, you ain't got nothing.
Right.
You ain't got nothing. So you know why I don't go to a lot of those things anymore? Because I know if I just help that dude on the block, if I help the people at work with their resume, if I tell that lady over there, nobody might not ever see me, and they'll never know. They say, oh, this dude just works for so-and-so. But I'm doing something on my own level. Whether it's known or not, I know I'm doing something. I know I'm helping people. I'm like praying for people if you need prayer. I'm showing you how to do something. So my point is, maybe not this meeting, but you go to the meetings, everybody's committed to talking and putting out their stuff and putting out their books and talking about this, and they talk about their degree, and I'll talk about my degrees, and he'll talk about his business, and everybody talk about something, and somebody talk about their grant money, somebody talk about this, and at the end of the day, you got a bunch of brothers, Negroes talking, but ain't nobody really committed to helping nobody. And if somebody's not making money, and somebody ain't getting a grant, you ain't gonna see now one of them people nowhere. And my whole point is to say, look, I'm not nobody special. And I don't really think realize I ain't as smart as I used to think I was, but I'm just trying to help one person at a time, and I'm committed to something. When I didn't make no money, and I was on the bond committee of the school district, or when I'm working, I got a decent job now. So I don't nobody ever have to know me. I'm just saying you go to the meetings, and it's like, everybody saying kumbaya, but ain't nobody doing no work. And so like, well, let's get to the point to where maybe you don't meet as much, but then you say, hey, Brian, man, I heard about that kid you helped. Hey, help that person. Don't just go out and necessarily need a result, need somebody to pat you on the back, need somebody to give you a grant, need somebody to get you on TV, and need somebody or whatever. And I am saying it to be facetious. You should be doing it because it's out of the graciousness of your heart. You should be doing it because I care about my people. If I go to Puerto Rico and I went to Puerto Rico, I see the black people, I'm willing to help the black people anywhere. I ain't got to speak the same language. Most of these Negroes, we speak the same language, and they act like we ain't speaking the same language. And we know all the people in the same set, but most of the people are concerned with themselves. I'm like, hey, let's just go ahead and do something. That's my frustration.
Excuse me, when you went to Puerto Rico, did someone mistake you for being a Puerto Rican?
Man, they sure did. I understood them 30% of the time.
When I was in the Virgin Islands, I practicing law down there. I used to have to go to Puerto Rico quite often to recruit and depose experts. And I was always kind of surprised that people just come up and talk to me in Spanish, and I tried to teach myself Spanish one time. I learned how to ask where the bathroom was. So I asked somebody where the bathroom was, they told me, and I didn't know what they had told me. I know what they had told me.
But see, it's that idea that there's a sense of community irrespective of who you are or where you're from. When I met him, before I knew he was from New Jersey, I knew that, hey, that's another brother. Hey, I gotta meet you. I gotta know who you are. Hey, what we got in common? Most people, they meet another brother, and it's a threat, whether it be a physical threat because he's taller than me, or a financial threat because I don't know this Negro and I don't know if he's going. How can I get something? Whether it be from a biblical standpoint or communal standpoint, if you're going all Patrice Lumumba, if you're going like, Simone Bolivar, if you're just going like, hey, Jesus of Nazareth, Son of God, you should be doing something. You should be helpful to someone. And I just want people, I guess without rambling, the summary is be helpful. We don't always have to meet. Do something without needing a result that benefits you, because the result is the community. When my best friend's father taught me how to tie a tie, when I could go over their house when I didn't have nowhere else to go, when they let me work to make money, guess what? That benefited me. So when I didn't have a father, I had a father figure, right? I didn't realize that until I was damn near 30 years old. This man helped me. He told me how to do this. These people, but you know what? They did it because now granted, I was best friends with their son. They knew my parents. They didn't have to do that. They didn't get paid for that. Nobody asked them to do that. My mother never sent them 29 cars, but they did that because that's what you're supposed to do. And a lot of times we talk about what we're supposed to do, but if you look at what they're doing, if you look at what they ain't helping nobody.
Well, that's the key. Basically, what you just said is basically the key. And the key is do, not talk, do.
Yeah.
We can meet, we can have this show, we can go and watch the game after, whatever. But at the end of the day, like you said, it's about doing. It's about action. Metrics. It's about, we were talking about metrics. Right. Show me what's the result? What's the community look like? In our community, whether it's here, Camden, Miami, wherever there's a heavily dense populated of black folks, You
That's
always see
that's
churches.
almost always going to be the
Right. You always see churches.
Bunch
And I'm a believer in Christ, so I'm not against the church. I'm just saying I agree with the point that this brother made, and that is about results. Do it because that's the right thing to do, not because I'm going to get something in return. I'm going to get a contract or whatever it is. We have to look at the results that we're getting in our community, and the statistics are terrible, generally across the board as far as social statistics and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But we have to look at what can we do to improve our community. What are we doing? Because what we're doing is obviously not working. There are some things that are working, but we need to do more of the things that might be, like he said, behind the scenes. You know, somebody teach a little boy how to tie a tie, whatever it is. I'm a part of Big Brothers Big Sisters, so so I do little things with my little guy. But it's nothing that's in the newspapers. It's nothing in magazines or anything like that. It's just he and I just connecting on a level. But we need more of that. But we've got to get past the being seen and not doing and not seeing any metrics to show that we're progressing.
I was going to say, look, to his point, in Baltimore, in New York, in LA, wherever, you need to have your metrics, but you need to be, again, open to different things.
Right.
Different things meaning that, different ideas, simple things. Some of the most effective things we had, and going back to fatherhood, when we had 2 parents in the home, we had more people graduate, more people staying married, more generally speaking, more wealth in our homes. I'm not saying everyone should be married, but the point is sometimes the metrics that you use are like he started with. Hey, you got a kid, you be responsible for your kid. You right? When I got a kid, I have a daughter. I'm not married to a mother now, but guess what? That girl cost me money, and I know when she graduates in 2 years, she's going to cost me more money. The whole point is, if you got something, if you make it, you take it. If you put it in, you take it when it get out. You're not going to hell if you do it necessarily. If you make a kid, but if you make it, it's like one-on-one basketball. If I shoot over him one-on-one, I'll take it. But you be responsible for it, because at the end of the day, the basic metric that it comes down to is what he was talking about. It's family. And manhood means family, means responsibility, means results. The basic result is be responsible. Women, choose a good man. I know it's hard out there. There's not a lot of us that got sense. I'm going to get married eventually. I'm going to find a good woman too, so I'm taking applications. And I am.
No solicitation, man.
That's not a monetary solicitation, is it? However, it's just the basic metric is family, and ultimately the basic thing is men being responsible. It doesn't mean you can't ever make a mistake. It just means be a responsible man at some point. Be active in your children's lives, and or women, do what you can, because at the end of the day, if you have that one thing that he started with, then that affects every aspect of family. There's a ripple effect, mentally, physically, spiritually, financially, upon generations. My grandfather was an airline porter. He didn't have a lot of money, but he took his kids to different places. And even though I've only really been to Puerto Rico, I got to get my passport so I can go somewhere else. I always had an understanding of different cultures, because that man showed his kids something. His kids showed their kids something, and he didn't. And he wasn't necessarily a good man. He had a drinking problem. You know what? But you know what? He showed. That's the one thing he did. He was, and he showed them how to do something. He had a place for them to live. So even though he had a problem drinking, he was still responsible in some way. So don't encourage him in drinking. I'm just saying, the basic metric, the basic thing is, he said it, fatherhood, and basically to me that means family. If you do that, if you get back to people being responsible for their children, their community, then anything else, and I have a degree in public policy, and I can talk about all that, blah, 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 but that's the basic thing. Public policy means nothing if people aren't going to be responsible, if people aren't going to care about their family.
That's right.
Sorry, that's a digression.
Brian, tell us a little bit more about your organization, please.
The Construction Initiative, that is birthed out of the profession that I'm in. I'm in construction, commercial construction. And I like the concept of construction. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to use the concept construction, and marry that with the concept of mentorship. Mentorship, discipleship, I use mentorship when I deal with people who aren't believers, and I use discipleship to deal with believers. But the concept of modeling is the key that we do with our organization. And so we're flexible, so we take people who are believers and some who are not. And so we use the concept of building, construction, to let people know that we're here to build you, build a man. A man isn't just born, you're born a male, but you have to become a man. So we give you the tools and the concepts about manhood. In part, not just the spiritual aspect, but we also help people with a marketable skill. In construction, I've had this many times. I would go to like an elementary school day or a high school day and kind of tell people what I do. So I'll take out a set of blueprints of a building that we're building. And the kids will be like, wow, look at that, I never saw it, wow, wow. So when they hear construction, they're thinking of an electrician, a plumber. Yeah, that's a construction trade. But what I do is the estimating. So I read the blueprints, I look at the drawings, I get linear footage, square footage, counts of different items and aspects of different modalities of construction. And we figure costs for material, labor, equipment, and all that. And then we submit pricing, and then we go build buildings. And so we try to introduce kids to another aspect of construction, not just so that they can go to a trade school and learn a trade. There's nothing wrong with it. There's a lot of money in construction, folks, a lot of money in construction if you're a tradesman. But I'm talking about the people who are in the office. That's where the real money is made. The people who are reading the blueprints, interacting with the general contractors, interacting with the architects. So we find kids who may not be college material, could be, might not necessarily be, and just show them what another avenue of making money is. You know, everybody needs a skill set. Everybody's not college material, and everybody doesn't want to be a builder per se with their hands. But this is just another way to find a marketable skill, something that you might be interested in. So that's what we do. We find kids and we try to open their eyes to another possibility.
Hey, can I say something about that? This organization, and I just heard about it today. Is that sorry about something. I was on the bond committee for the school district. Did I leave something?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. I was on the bond committee for the school district for several years, and the one thing I know is that what he said, if you're talking about different things, there is a lot of money to be made, and a lot of times what we didn't necessarily always do, we didn't understand much of what he said in regards to the things that were important, the things that would be helpful to our community, because sometimes people would come in, these are the black contractors, and they wouldn't necessarily be ready. Right? It doesn't mean they're bad people, but somebody has to, what did we say earlier? Somebody mentors you, right?
That's right.
And you would come in and you would want to try to be helpful to them, but they didn't always, different people rather, but they didn't have the requisite information or knowledge to be successful. And frankly, I would just even say, look, and I don't have that many connections anymore because the school district has changed a little bit. But to the extent you can, hey, try to get in there, because if you just go and look at any school board of Austin or where you from, New Jersey or wherever, there's lots of money. And you got to do things a certain way. But I guess what I'm trying to say is what he said is very important, because you would see there's a lot of money to be made. There's a lot of opportunities if you have the skill set that he's talking about. And that's what we don't do. We don't share the information, and people just hoard all the information up and like, I got mine $100,000. No, fool, ain't you fit for what's that phrase? Pay forward. Didn't you think didn't God tell you to, if you have money, to go out and share it with others? Well, it doesn't mean maybe you're sharing it might mean your knowledge.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Because your knowledge is money, your time is money. So it's like what he's doing, each one of us can do. And it's my sister says in some of her business stuff, you're teaching somebody how to monetize their skills. That's right. To acquire the skill and how to monetize it. Well, I need to do better at that myself. But the point of it is that, well, we all do. I mean, you do too. I know everybody does. But it's the idea that you're sharing. You're sharing the information.
That's right.
You're sharing the information, and you understand that the result is not necessarily one you will always see, but it was one that you will always affect.
Planting a seed.
Exactly. You're planting a seed, and so ultimately your metric, it might not even be something that's quantifiable.
It seems like with all discussion, we're talking about really looking at a way of looking at things, a way of thinking of things, which to me, it gets back to education. and thinking. And it's like, as a community, we need to begin to think, not collectively, but as working as a collective and functioning as a collective, not disconnected.
And what, if I can jump in, that's a good point, because unfortunately, there are a lot of people who are waiting for somebody to lead them, to give them direction on what they're supposed to do. But everybody, to a degree, is a leader. Everybody is. Everybody has the potential of leadership. Everybody has gifts, talents, and ideas on the inside of them. The problem is that it seems as though people don't feel or seem empowered or confident in their own abilities, in themselves, to go out into the marketplace, to get connected, and to go to work. We've been trained so long to just sit down and just go to school and wait and listen and be a good boy and go get a job for 40 years. And there's nothing wrong with getting a job. I'm saying people, I've had to learn this over the years. When you have a dream for a reason, not just to sit on it. That dream is for you to go act. Might not be something that's going to manifest today or next week, but that dream was given to you for a reason, for you to go act upon it. But I know a lot of people have not been. I had some phone calls and some people contact me a few weeks ago. Both of these people were in their 50s. They've been born again believers for 20, 30 years. And they both confided in me and said that they were frustrated with their life, that their life didn't end up the way that they thought it would be. They're in their 50s going on 60, and they haven't accomplished the things that they wanted to accomplish. They're not broke or anything, but they don't feel fulfilled. They're faithful church attenders, all that stuff, but they had dreams when they were younger, and life just kind of just passed them by. Yeah. And they didn't get proactive, and they didn't make it happen. Life just happened. And so they were frustrated, and I'm seeing more and more people. I know a 40-year-old lady had the same kind of conversation with her, and I'm seeing more people that they want more out of life. And the one thing that I see interwoven between all these people is that they waited. They just waited. Mm-hmm. They didn't act. They didn't take action. They didn't pursue somebody who was doing what they were doing and then jump on their coattails and say, "Show me how to do it." Or somebody who was doing it didn't say, "Hey, you want me to show you how to do this? Come follow me." Modeling. We don't see that a lot in our community. And when we do see the modeling, it's those knuckleheads on the block with those little kids, and they're modeling. So we've got to do a better, more intentional job of getting out into the marketplace, connecting with people, not just kids. Kids are important, but there's adults who are hurting, adults who are our age who are hurting and want to go forward in the marketplace. We have to show them how to do it.
Modeling is also an aspect of education.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because that's what teachers do during instruction.
Absolutely.
They're modeling. And so we're talking about we need to do more community modeling.
Absolutely.
Through our actions.
Yeah, people frankly have to be willing to educate themselves, and the same expectation you would have on your kid or your grandkid or your nephew should be the same expectation you have for yourself. And so that it is never too late. I met a guy, he was a real famous guy here in Austin. I didn't really know him very well. His name was Willie Kasurik. And at 60, this man went back 60 or 60, so he went back at 60 and went to law school. And I'll give you, even one of my grandmothers went back to college at 50-something. Well, you know what? Whatever age you are, whatever problem you have, whatever malady, whatever kind of depression you have, there's a decision you have to make internally.
That's right.
And we have to encourage each other, not to just jump off and say, "Oh, I'm going to do something without planning," but to encourage each other to do what he's saying, which is to get around the right people, to model the right things, and frankly, even just to be bold.
Which is to act courageously.
To act courageously, but sometimes the education that we need to instill is book knowledge, right? But sometimes education we need to also instill is the ability to understand that to grow past our mental inhibitions, to grow past perhaps like who we see ourselves as spiritually, whether it be a spiritual leader or whatever. You have to understand that it's not too late,
That's
and
right.
because your children see this, your grandchildren see this. You know, you see this modeling or this behavior. So I think you're right that the education must be first, because I always knew I had to finish school. I didn't know nothing else because that one thing was instilled. But see, one thing you have to get past that is to say, okay, Kennard, well, you know what? I know the time you lost your job and you didn't have no money or whatever, and you couldn't have nowhere to stay or whatever, blah, 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 blah. You have to be able to push past that adversity.
That's right.
Because if you can't push past adversity, life is going to smack the hell out of you.
That's right.
And even God says in the Bible, He says you'll have many adversities, but I will take you through
Challenges
them
will
all.
happen.
But the point is that your education as a person, intellectually, mentally, and spiritually, how you inculcate whatever you want to say, the different life lessons will determine your success. The education is like the cornerstone of when we talk about faith. The education is the cornerstone of success, but you have to have that outlook. You have to have the right mindset to succeed. Because my education, my 2 degrees didn't mean nothing when I didn't necessarily have nothing, but I had to adjust my attitude. Because your education will get you but so far, so you need it. But we have a dependent attitude, if you would.
It's not a
When we
it's not
depend
a be
upon
all
that-
end all.
Well, the education is a be all. Your attitude is an end all.
Okay.
Because your education opens the doors. If I can't understand what we're talking about, the community, if I can understand how to move forward, if I can understand that, how to move past the problem, the education is irrelevant because your mentality is the thing that's limiting you. So your education has to be beyond a book.
And your gift, because the Bible says your gift will make room for you.
Exactly.
If you hone your skill set.
Yep.
Yeah. But also, brother made a good point here. Talk about, basically he's talking about mental toughness, pushing through. Our Savior did the same thing. The Bible, Hebrews says, for the glory that was set before him, he endured the cross. It was because he saw what was before him.
He had a vision.
So he saw the vision. He
had a
saw it.
vision.
He saw the end. And so he pressed through what he was going through, and the end was what pulled him through. He saw the end. And that's what we have to have. When we see a vision, when we have a dream that we want to do, and you might be 30, 40, 50 years old, doesn't matter, press through. Just press through.
Well, you know what this kind of comes back to in my way of thinking?
No, yes, sir.
Is earlier, very early, you said about that one-on-one interaction that you do. You don't have to, no rah-rah shit, no meeting this, no meeting that. Just help one person at a time. It kind of reminds me of when I was young, really young, and I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a lawyer I had just had one thing in mind. I say, if I can change one person's life for the better, it will be worth it to have lived. You know, that was in my kind of like in my head.
That was your seed, because if everybody thought something like that, or let's say it's a decent number, then you get to everything else that we talked about. If everyone say, can I help one person? Can I bless one person? That's a seed, and it's a mustard seed. It might be tiny as you know what. You might not see that seed, but that seed will grow expansive. So hey, I'm trying to go all biblical and funny at the same time. Work with me here. But the thing you have to, that seed, that I want to help. And maybe everybody's not going to be like that. And I understand that. I mean, that's okay. But more people need to be like that, because if you understand how people are biblically, if you just understand human psychology, you understand how things work. And frankly, you talked about vision, and Jesus had vision. I mean, he had Father, he had the Holy Spirit and all that. But even if you don't believe in him, let's say you're Baha'i faith, whatever, you need to understand that, look, we need to have a vision. We can sit here and talk about the police shooting us up, but guess what? There's more of us shooting each other up than the police. We're trying to do something, stop Black Lives Matter. And I'm not saying you're bad if you're Black Lives Matter. Although interesting, I'm just saying let's have a vision on mass. Let's have a vision for as many things as we need to cover, but we need to have a vision that incorporates different values, different beliefs, political, economic, social, perhaps spiritual. The whole point is let's have a vision that's collective, because then we can achieve something. We can't achieve nothing if I'm calling him a jigaboo, you calling me a so-and-so. You know, we have, the only vision we have is oftentimes a discord. We're not a community. We're not a family. A family works together. See, we went through enslavement. We were a family to some extent. You could be on a different plantation. You go somewhere else. Guess what? They understood. Nowadays, you come from Baltimore versus New Jersey. You're like, well, what's up? What's up? Even in the workplace, a girl came in. She's from D.C. Wherever, or New York or whatever, and she's like, I'm coming for your job. And I'm like, no, ho, sister. So you understand that there's jobs, there's more than enough stuff to go out for everybody. It wasn't just about me. She came in with that, she was a cool person. She came in with that, I'm going to take your mentality. No, see, right there, you showing me where you're coming from. And she's a good person, but I had to adjust her. No, there's enough for all of us. And I was, so there's this mentality. We have to have vision, and we have to have a collective mentality. Am I saying we need to be socialists? No, I'm really not saying that at all, because that always goes bad. But I am saying that, I had a shirt in college that said, he's not heavy, he's my brother. And I can't fit that shirt, but I still got it. I had one that said, each one teach one for a positive black American. Another one that said, I'm black to tell you why I'm black by birth, by choice, by community, or whatever. But community. Help your brother, help your sister. Help. Work together. Have vision. Have vision.
Well, to me, it's also one has to think in terms of plenty, not scarcity.
Exactly,
That's
but
right.
see, what happens is through enslavement, and I won't even say Western culture, because I don't even think it's that limited to that. There's this idea of like, it's mine, it's mine, it's mine. No, it's ours.
Mine's.
It's ours. It's ours. Now, it doesn't mean I'm giving you all my money. No, it doesn't mean any of that. But what it does mean is that, look, we talk about we're free, and we oftentimes exhibit the behavior or the legacy of enslavement. And yes, the white man did it and all this, and the slavery started off in the Arab world, just to let y'all know. Just not bad if you're Arab, but white man just was really good at it. Slavery was started in the Arab world 200 to 400 years before the West. Portuguese kind of picked it up, delivering people. But the point of it is that, you have to understand who you are, and he said it, touched on it earlier, you can no longer blame solely the white man for the legacies and the bad behaviors, because this is something people have internalized through music, through culture, through how you treat your woman, through what kind of man you want. I want a thug. Okay, well, guess what that's going to get you? So the point is that there's I guess all I'm trying to get to here is that there's a point where we're responsible for our culture, and we've known that before. Now we're always, well, hey, the president is so and so, and the police did this. No, we're responsible for our reaction. So when you understand that the responsibility for who you are is in you, not what happens to you. That's basic human psychology. These people can't even understand that. I'm not even going biblical. What you say will produce what you have. So if I say I ain't got nothing, that nigga ain't this. I don't need the. Excuse my language. I don't need this. I don't need that. I'm gonna take kids. I'm gonna hurt her. I'm gonna do. You are announcing to the world. You're announcing to your children that you don't value your culture. You don't value your people. You don't value yourself. And then you wonder why we ain't got nothing. You wonder why there's no sense. Well, check yourself. Remember, there was a song, I don't remember who it was, this is a rap song. He said, you better check yourself before you wreck yourself. Because, and the whole point, let's check ourselves. Don't blame the white man no more, because guess what? The white man ain't in your house, in your bathroom, when you talking about your ex-wife and you cussing her out in front of your children.
That's right.
The white man ain't in there if you beating on that woman, or if you doing drugs, you ain't taking care of your kids. I'm not saying that the white man or society isn't responsible, because it is in some degree. I'm just saying that we have power, and you have to use the power you got.
That's right.
May bear some responsibility for the conditions, but ultimately
for the decisions.
And not to go biblical, not to get you on the biblical tip, but ultimately the choice is yours. We have free will.
That's right. You're a free will sentient being.
Exactly.
And you have the ability. We have imagination. We have mental faculties that no other creature on the planet has, and we can change our environment. We have memory, perception, reason, will, imagination, and intuition. We can use these mental faculties. A lot of times we live by our five senses. Right. Sight, taste, feel, And so we're very good at correcting. If something's wrong with my sight, I can put my glasses on. If something's wrong with my hearing, I can put a hearing aid on. But how many times have we been taught how to use our imagination, to dream, to use our intuition, to strengthen our will, to concentrate on holding an image that's going to take us forward instead of looking backwards. We're not good, we haven't been good at training our people, or people in general, about developing those mental faculties. Rather, we're looking at those physical senses.
And that's what a real education would do.
That's right.
It would stimulate you mentally.
That's right.
To achieve all that you can possibly achieve within what you're blessed with.
But the other thing is, even with education, you need to have an expectation.
That's right.
You need to have an expectation that you're going to do something. Now, you may just graduate from high school. That's okay, because guess what? Some of the richest people in the world, they ain't get very far in college.
Right.
You know what? But somewhere in their life, whether it be their mother, father, Uncle Fred, the rabbi, somebody down the street, somebody had an expectation or planted a seed of expectation in that kid. And then somebody else more than likely came along and watered it. And then that kid at some point had the germination occurred. So I'm just saying that there's an expectation that you have. I don't expect my daughter to be exactly who I am. I'm okay if she don't go to college, even though I like her to go to college. But the point is, I want her to be who she was created. There's an expectation for you to be and do what you are supposed to be. And to his point, and this is going to sound real good, it took me a long time as a man to figure this one out. This is the best one ever. My role as a man, and I'm not married. You remember applications, but I'm sorry, I can't help it. I'm not giving out my email address, but it's like my name. But no, but my role as a man, and we don't do this. My role as a man is to, he said it earlier, is to pattern things for my children. Right. But even more so, my role as a man, if I choose to marry a woman, she chooses to marry me. My role is to help her be the woman she is supposed to be. My role is not just to unga bunga, Fred Flintstone, protect you. Yes, ma'am. My role is to help her be who she needs to be. So if you understand that that's a mental, spiritual, financial thing, then even if I go and have a girlfriend, you know what I do if I go out with somebody? I'm encouraging them. I'm not trying to make them who I want them to be. Now, I can be very difficult. I want to let you know. However,
not you. Yeah, not you.
But the point of it is, a good man, and this is like almost a metaphor for the community. Or maybe it's not a simile because I'm not using light. But anyway, which is a good leader will help you be who you need to be, a good man. And if more people men understood, it's not about slanging stuff, it's not about big sizes or anything like that. It's about how you love on, how you support, how you encourage, how you help that person or that woman grow, even that kid. You can be the dumbest son of a gun in the world, but understand that one thing. You could be a horrible drunkard and understand that one thing. You could be horrible with your money, but understand that one thing. If you do that halfway decent, then that gets you to that point to where you can have more people in the community, to where you can have more stuff. We don't need a meeting. You don't need a meeting to have a meeting. You just need somebody to understand what it is to be a man. This is something that's very basic. This is something that is primordial. This is something that's in the Bible. What did Jesus do? Or whatever. He served other people.
That's right.
He served. He helped them be who they created to be. He brought stuff out of them they didn't realize it was in them. It was like I had a class of Barbara Jordan. It was a class of God. She drew stuff out of you that you weren't sure that was there. That is the role of the man. Not to hunga bunga, sit down and give me my stuff. The role of the man is to, hey, let me show you, let me help you be who you're created to be. Let me nurture you, let me love you. When you do that, then we have success. That's the best thing I can say.
Okay, I gotta start trying to wrap up here. We're getting a little short on time, but with these fellas, we could probably talk quite a while if we really wanted, if we really could. But I want to thank you.
2-hour show.
I want to thank you, gentlemen, for joining me on the show. And it's really, really been enlightening and instructive for me. I hope the same is true for the audience. I can't leave without saying my show is about a couple of simple things. If we talk right, we may think right. And if we think right, we may act right. And if we act right, we hopefully will end up doing the right thing. It took me months to work that out.
It did?
It took you about 5 minutes, but it's like that.
At least I know. Well, it's not like you can't get right. That's a reference to the movie.
But I want to thank you guys for coming on the show, and I probably want to get you guys back on again so we won't ever finish.
Yes,
we can discuss it further.
Yes, you will. You
We're
have to
finished?
decree the end from the beginning, brother. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You have to be certain in your heart. That's part of the issue. We're not certain. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to run the show.
I want to thank you, Kennard, as usual.
Yes, sir.
And Brian, I really want to thank you for coming on the show, and welcome to Austin. Welcome to the belly of the beast.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Glad you're here. We're
It's
gonna pray
good,
for
it's
you one
good to
time.
be, period.
Yeah.